to talk about the AASLH Leadership and History Awards nomination process and my experience having completed a nomination successfully, and also now kind of serving as the state representative for Alaska for the awards committee. So I can talk a little bit about what I've learned personally through having completed a nomination that ended up successfully receiving an award from AASLH, and then also kind of what I've learned since I agreed to serve as the Alaska representative for AASLH's awards committee. So I'm the grants manager at the Anchorage Museum, but know many of you from other capacities when I worked for the State Historic Preservation Office. So I've been able to kind of see the projects around the state that might be considered for awards like this, and definitely I think Stefini gave an outstanding introduction to the reasons why we should be looking at these local and national awards, as well as an understanding of the kind of benefits that we get from nominating and receiving awards as professionals, and for our institutions. The recognition is really, really important. So let's see, I do have control, you said. Okay. So I'll talk a little bit about the AASLH Leadership and History Awards and my experience completing the nominations. And I also have on my other screen here, so forgive me for bouncing back and forth, a little bit of material that I received from AASLH when I signed on as the state representative that talks a little bit about their goals for their organization to encouraging people to submit nominations. So they have essentially two award types, an award of distinction and an award of excellence. And the award of distinction is due earlier. It's due January 31st of each year, and the award of excellence is due March 1st. So you'll probably hear from AASLH as an organization, and maybe perhaps from your regional and state representatives at the beginning of the year, late December, early January, encouraging colleagues and professionals in the field to consider either one of these awards. The awards committee may then, upon review of nominations, choose kind of an additional layer of recognition. And these are explained on their website. So I would definitely encourage you to get onto AASLH's awards section on their website to take a look at the two primary types of awards and then the additional layer of recognition. The additional layer of recognition is not something that you need to complete additional nomination materials for. It is just something that the awards committee can elect to add once they've reviewed a nomination package. So it's not additional work, but it's a nice additional recognition should your project qualify in the eyes of the awards committee. So the goal of the National Leadership Awards team at AASLH is to identify and recognize excellence in the collection, preservation, and interpretation of state and local history through the Leadership and History Awards. So that's their main goal that they identify. And you should know that there are 14 regional representatives across the 50 states, and hopefully each state has a representative that can help guide interested individuals and professionals that are completing nominations for their awards. We as state representatives just essentially serve as liaisons between the national organization, the regional representatives, and our state colleagues who are interested in completing nominations. Let's see. We can be available to answer questions about the nomination process or refer you to appropriate contacts at the national, regional, or national level. Let's see. So I wanted to keep this presentation pretty simple because I think that we do tend to we get scared away from nominating projects for awards because we feel like the process is onerous, or that it's too complicated, or that we don't have enough time. And indeed, my experience was much of what Bethany stated in her presentation. A lot of this documentation that's requested for these award nomination packages already exists in our records, either through grant-related documentation or just project administrative record type materials. And so I think a lot of it's already there. That was my experience. And also, I do think that Bethany was correct in stating that the awards committees do want concise, succinct materials for these nominations. And so my focus in completing the nomination that I did was to keep it simple, both for my personal benefit and to keep my commitment to this nomination process kind of minimal, but also for the benefit of the awards committee. And I think that keeping things concise and succinct and tight, a tight package is really actually what they're looking for. The operating plan goals for AASLH are to have around 125 nominations per year and at least one nomination from each state. As Bethany mentioned in her presentation, Alaska professionals have not done a whole lot of nominations in the past several years. I think the nomination that I completed and submitted in 2018 was the first that they had in some time, but I could be wrong. So we definitely want to encourage our Alaska colleagues and peers to consider looking across the different organizations that make awards and to go ahead and go for it, like Bethany said. Hi, Amy. I'm going to talk about the project that I nominated in just 1 minute. Thank you for your question. So in terms of steps, we want to, the AASLH National Organization strongly recommends that you contact your state or regional representative. They may or may not be able to help too much, but at least they can answer questions about the process. Depending on their familiarity with the project that you're nominating, they actually may be able to help a lot more in terms of conducting draft reviews and providing editorial comments and that sort of thing. So definitely contact us. Read the awards manual. It's not too complex to get through, and it really does provide a lot of information about their process, their review process, and timing, and what their expectations are. There's also a webinar that's offered every year and is also available as a pre-recorded session on AASLH's website about the process, and I'll provide that information in a minute. All of their nomination materials are expected to be submitted online. That's my personal preference. I appreciate that I didn't have to prepare a hard copy packet of materials. I could just submit everything online in PDF format. So that was pretty cool. The review, as I mentioned, the award of distinction deadline is January 31st, and the other award that they have, the award of excellence, is due March 31st. And then their review process occurs from March to May. And then the award is announced and publicly recognized at their annual meeting in August-September timeframe. So I found the components pretty manageable of the AASLH Leadership in History Awards nomination. A narrative, which is made up of a few different parts, but ultimately only adds up to about 1,000 words, which I think for most of us is really not that complicated or onerous. 2 letters of critical review, which Bethany definitely addressed, and I think her description of the letters of critical review and what the intent is was perfect, and that's exactly what I gathered from AASLH. 1-page budget, which Bethany also said, and resumes of key personnel. And then I can't emphasize enough or re-emphasize Bethany's point about providing additional documentation, in particular photographs of your project. And I think that actually is what really supported our nomination. Let's see if there's anything else that I want to add from the ASLH presentation. Okay, so moving on. So be in touch with us. Attend that free informational webinar. It's called What Are the Leadership in History Awards? And it's available, as I mentioned, online on AASLH's website. And then I think they do a live one every year. Be concise. In particular for the AASLH awards, they want you to show how the project demonstrates good history. And so, I focused on that. In fact, I used that terminology in my nomination, and I think that's important to make that connection. That's what they're really looking for. And there are a bunch of FAQs and tips and resources available on their website. So the project that I nominated in 2018 is the Anchorage Museum's Photo Identification Project. Each year, the Atwood Resource Center librarians and archivists attend the Alaska Federation of Natives convention in Anchorage or in Fairbanks, and we bring a stack of photographs from our archives for which we have very little identifying information. And we ask attendants, delegates, and the public that are coming to AFN to just peruse the photographs and provide information if they recognize elements of the built environment, if they recognize landscape features, if they recognize people or places, to literally write on the photograph in pencil what they recognize, the names of people, names of places. It's a very simple yet powerful project to allow us to build our the context for our archives in our collection. And it also is a very meaningful community connection type project. And I just felt like it was an outstanding example of good history, as AASLH describes. And so that's the project that I nominated for the, I always mess up, the Award of Excellence. What's it called? Yeah, Award of Excellence. And I submitted my nomination under, I think, a special project subheader. So following the committee's review of the nomination package, this project was actually awarded the additional distinction of the History in Progress Award, which was really an honor for us to receive. And as I mentioned, here's some photographs that I included in the nomination package. Essentially, the project is we set up a booth at AFN and bring folders that are organized regionally around the state. And we have a little army of volunteers and staff that invite people to just come and look through photographs. And it's an incredible experience to watch people when they do recognize a person or a place. I've personally witnessed, and I haven't been at the Anchorage Museum very long, but I've personally witnessed people recognize their grandparents or their siblings or the house that they grew up in. It's very, very meaningful, and is a really fun project to participate in. Albeit very simple. It's a very simple approach, and I think these are the types of projects, even simple projects, are ones that AAFLH or other national organizations might be very, very interested in, as Bethany mentioned, as models for other projects and other institutions. Here's some other pictures. The woman in the upper left-hand corner, I believe that is herself or her sister in the picture that she's holding up. And then after some time after the award was given to the museum, AASLH published a feature on the project in their local newsletter magazine. And not their local newsletter magazine, but their national newsletter magazine, excuse me. And we also, because of that recognition, had an opportunity to have a feature on this project in ADN. So that was pretty cool. So for me, lessons learned, it was not as difficult as I expected. I just poked away at it a little bit here and there as I could to compile the materials. A great project really does speak for itself, and the benefits, I think, far outweigh the effort that it takes to get a nomination package pulled together. So both for the personnel involved as well as the people affected by the project, if it is indeed good history in the case of AASLH awards. And also the project benefited from additional publicity and recognition for a simple yet powerfully impactful project. So I think those are my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Thank you, Shina.
Thank you.
It's a great project. Amy, are you ready to talk about Museums Alaska Awards?
Yes, let me start up here. Okay, can you all hear me and see me?
I can see you and I can hear you.
Excellent. So I have just a much shorter pitch here. Museums Alaska has been offering awards for over 30 years, and they are in 3 general categories, and we just opened our award nomination process. So we are currently soliciting nominations for the fall conference, for awards to be given at the fall conference. And the 3 categories we have can be found on the awards part of our website. And I'm going to paste that into the chat. I don't know if that's helpful to anybody, but the main categories are, we have one for volunteers. So this is an opportunity to thank and acknowledge somebody who has given their time to your organization. We also have one for people who are leaving the profession, people who are retiring or moving on to something else, to the next chapter. We have an award for that. And then finally, one for Museum Excellence, which we mentioned earlier. Bethany was a recent winner of that award. And that one celebrates an organization, a person, a project. It could be an exhibit. It could be just a wonderful collections project. It really could be anything. So that's a pretty broad category for current practice. And Della and I are starting to work really hard this year to get more notice of these awards. We think, as many of you have said before, that awards are a great way for people to be recognized, not only for their contributions, but for interesting practice that can be examples to other people. And so we're hoping to get more applications this year. Often we get a nice handful, but we would really like to make this program a little bit more competitive and also more visible. And I am going to let Della speak to that in a minute. Della has a wonderful new idea of ways to help us sort of promote the award after we've selected the winners. I just wanted to say, I looked at the AASLH applications before I came to this meeting just to see what they were asking, and I thought Bethany's presentation was excellent. Museums Alaska Awards are a lot simpler. They are online. It's a simple online form that just requires that the person who's nominating identify themselves and who they're nominating and in what category. And then you have a space to write several hundred words about why this is an important project or a person who deserves recognition and the impact of that person or project. And I think it's more, I'd like people to think of it more as a letter. I've done these nominations in the past and found them to be a great way for me to just, I sit down with a Word file and I write a letter, and then I tweak that a little bit and paste it right into the submission box. It's really an easy entry sort of award. I think, with a couple hours of time, you could create and submit a nomination that would do a nice job summarizing your thoughts. So I will let people look more specifically at the awards page. Oh, Anjali's pulling it up for us. Thank you, Anjali. There's also a list of the past winners. If you scroll to the bottom of that, here's some nice pictures of the past award winners. But if you scroll below each of the award categories, you'll see a list of people and organizations and projects that have been honored in the past. So this is a good way to see the kinds of things that have been already selected and honored. And as you can see, there are a few, we still have question marks in our record keeping. If anybody remembers an award that's not listed here, we'd love to hear about it. I also wanted to make a little push, just a little, put on my marketing hat for a second and say, awards are really a great way to get the word out about your organization and about the people who work for you. And I'm going to let Della speak here in a second about her idea, but we really at Museums of Alaska are working on that right now as a member of the board and somebody who's actively involved in the grants program at Museums of Alaska. We are trying to get promotional information out, press releases, other social media posts, other recognition to award winners. And so that's something we really want to help our awardees and the people who nominate with. So we see this as not only giving you the award, but finding ways then to help you promote it. Della, would you like to speak about the new initiative this year?
Sure. Excuse me. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, so I apologize in advance. So I just ran this idea past Amy, and as you all know, one of the major things that Museums Alaska does on behalf of museums in the state is advocacy work. And so we just thought a great way to blend the two areas of focus would be to actually reach out to local leaders, legislators, maybe the governor's office, depending on what the award is specifically, and just ask for a letter of acknowledgement. And so this is a way both to really acknowledge and highlight the work that our professionals are doing in the state, but also it's a little bit of advocacy. It's getting the word out about what museums are doing.
And it's also a great way to get our local legislators involved in our museum process. So helping them share in the success of the people they represent.
Absolutely.
I don't have a lot more to add about the awards, Della. Was there anything that I didn't hit that you would like to add?
No, I don't think so. I guess as Bethany was talking, I was realizing how very simple our process is. So I encourage everyone, if you've not applied for an award in the past and you want to get a really easy application done for your first one, our nomination form is very simple, I think, compared to some of the national awards.
And might I add that you could always reuse one award package for another award.
Yes, I have actually done that. Successfully.
Great. Sheena, could you tell on the camera how long it took for you to apply for the AASLH award?
Sure. I would say I worked on it a couple hours here and there, an hour or two here and there. I didn't, luckily I got news from the organization well in advance so that I wasn't in like this crunch that Bethany talked about in her presentation. If you get into a crunch, it can be overwhelming and frustrating. But I worked on it for probably maybe a total of 6 to 8 hours all told, but it was over a period of a couple weeks. So I just, check in with the people who I was requesting letters of critical review from and say, hey, have you had a chance to write this? Can you send me your resume? Collecting photos from personnel who have been involved in the project, looking over past documentation like the budget. And in my case, the budget for this particular project was pretty simple. So it was very nice to nominate a simple project because it ended up translating into a simple nomination. So if you have a more complicated project with a more complicated budget and many moving parts, such as a large exhibition or a community outreach project, things like that can take significantly more time, I imagine. But if you plan accordingly, as Stefini rightly pointed out, an hour or two here and there is much more palatable than the super crunch procrastination and the frustration that comes along with that.
I was just thinking also if people are interested in pursuing one of these awards and need a letter of critical review, I, as the Curator of Statewide Services, would be happy to provide that. That's part and parcel of my job is to help support museums across Alaska. So if you feel like you don't know who to ask or it's too much work for someone, please think of me as a resource for that. And Shina, please tell that to people that contact you as well.
Okay, I will. Thank you. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add one more thing to the Museums of Alaska discussion of our awards, and that is that they're all reviewed by a volunteer committee of colleagues. So there's a group of people who've signed up to review at Della. They come to Della, they go out then to the committees to review, and we meet as a group to discuss them. So it's a very friendly group of peers looking at these nominations.
Great. And I realized that we didn't mention another award possibility with Museums Alaska, but also the Alaska Historical Society, and that's the Travel Scholarship, which of course isn't necessarily an award for a project that you've already done, but is something to be aware of. There is funding available to attend the annual conference, and I'm sure that there's information available on the Travel Scholarship at the Museums Alaska website. In addition, the Alaska Historical Society has a Travel Scholarship too. And maybe I'll really quickly, since I was just at the Alaska Historical Society's website, I'll just quickly mention some of the awards that they have available for history-related projects that go to historical societies, museums, and other entities. So please think about these as well. There's the James Ducker Historian of the Year Award, which is for an Alaska resident for creating an important new publication about Alaska history in the last year. So it could be the Anchorage Museum and the Alutiiq Museum have done that. Consider applying for that. There's the Esther Billman Certificate of Excellence, which is for a project done by an organization. The Evangeline Atwood Award for Excellence is for long-term contributions to Alaska state or local history. The Barbara Sweetland Smith Pathfinder Award is specifically for archives-related projects, finding and describing resources related to Alaska history. And then there's the Elva R. Scott Local Historical Society Newsletter Award, which seems to have been expanded to e-newsletters and other sort of publications of museums and historical societies. You can find out more about these at the Alaska Historical Society's webpage. Any other thoughts or comments before we sign off today? That sounds like a no. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.